The professor told Ji Hoon that in the future, Cherin would listen to him and his opinions, so she asked him not to regret his parental decisions. The man agreed to this. Ji Hoon thought he was a good father, but the upcoming entrance exams made him doubt it. Ji Hoon turned to Professor Choi Woo-suk. He was sitting across from the man and indignantly said that Cherin was his daughter and the professor should have discussed with him what was going to happen to the girl. Choi Woo-hyuk sincerely apologized. He embarrassedly said that he should have talked to Ji Hoon first and that he would try to make sure that this would not happen again. Ji Hoon honestly admitted that he was a little upset. Choi Woo-hyuk smiled and apologized for not telling Ji Hoon in the first place. That was exactly what the man wanted to hear. The professor had various notebooks in front of him. He said that it was all about competition and that due to the school's inattention, Cherin's results became public knowledge. The professor drank his coffee and continued to say that there would not have been such a problem if it was just a leak. However, the number of schools that wanted to accept Cherin increased. Ji Hoon said that if the professor wanted to enroll her, it wouldn't work without Cherin's consent. Choi Woo-hyuk replied that the man was right about that. Many people wanted to see them both. And this could have become a big problem for the father and daughter. Then the professor said he didn't want to lose Cherin, so he discussed everything with Professor Beck and the school president. It took about 2 days. Ji Hoon realized it was yesterday. The professor embarrassedly replied that he hadn't been able to talk to his husband about it because he was away at work. Ji Hoon didn't know that, and he apologized for having scolded the professor. Choi Woo-hyuk replied that he would have been upset too, because it was his child after all. But the professor promised that it would not happen again. Ji Hoon thanked the professor sincerely. Choi Woo-hyuk thanked the man in return for his understanding. The man turned to leave, but the professor said that he was waiting for him at the workplace, because Cherin would only stay with them if Ji Hoon was there. The man was surprised. He turned to the professor and asked him if he knew how in grocery stores you get bonuses when you buy one item. Choi Woo-hyuk replied that everyone gets a free 500 milliliters of detergent. Ji Hoon replied, embarrassed, that he and Cherin did, too. The professor realized that Ji Hoon was the free 500 milliliters. The man wondered why he was, since he was already on his way to his doctorate. The professor was looking through some records and calmly replied that it was Ji Hoon. The man smiled and asked if the professor would change his mind. Choi Woo-hyuk replied that he would never, and that Ji Hoon could go. These words struck the man right in the heart. It was deadly for Ji Hoon. He realized that in the lab, he was nothing more than a variable. The title that Ji Hoon had received for all his efforts at the university was actually due to Cherin. He doubted that he could decide her future. It was still a mystery to Ji Hoon why he was not considered a genius father. And then he received some unexpected news. The man was very surprised by the combination of the words USA and he. Choi Woo-hyuk began to say that there was an AI symposium in Boston. He told Ji Hoon to listen to it with him. The man began to say that he had just recently joined their lab. Ji Hoon said that he was not sure if a newcomer should go and that he would rather choose Songbi instead. Choi Woo-hyuk replied that Ji Hoon should go and that he was too old to joke about such things. The man couldn't understand why he was the one to go and asked if his report was related to the topic of the symposium. The professor replied that it was an interesting approach and a good report. Ji Hoon was happy that he had finally contributed to the work of the laboratory. He asked the professor how long he had been there. Choi Woo-hyuk replied that it was 3 days in the east and 4 in the west, so Ji Hoon should be well prepared. The man wondered what he should do with Ji Hoon since he would be gone for a whole week. The professor mentioned that they were going to visit some tourist places, so he asked him to prepare some nice clothes for his daughter. Ji Hoon was surprised that he could take Cherin with him. The professor looked at him and asked why the man decided to leave his daughter alone. Ji Hoon thought that he would be alone, because this was a trip to a symposium, not a vacation. Suddenly, he heard Cherin's surprised voice behind him. She angrily began to ask why Daddy was going to go to the United States without her. Ji Hoon was embarrassed by her sudden appearance. Choi Woo-hyuk began to say that his presentation was about artificial intelligence and he couldn't leave Cherin behind. The girl happily replied that it was the right decision. Then Ji Hoon started to worry about the ticket for her. The professor replied that the lab would cover all the expenses. Ji Hoon's legs began to tremble. He said he had to go. The man realized that he was going not because his article was good, but because otherwise John Il would not go. Choi Woo-hyuk smiled and said that was true. Ji Hoon was stunned. Choi Woo-hyuk smiled and said that the man was reacting very suddenly. Ji Hoon was stunned. The professor turned to Cherin and asked her if she was happy to be going to the United States. The girl jumped for joy and could not wait for this moment. Ji Hoon's whole body began to shake. He realized that nothing was making sense. He remembered how hard he studied to win a competition in high school and then at university. He continued his studies in high school until he was humiliated by Jang Dong-ho. But after 28 years of hard work, he became just an addition to the Cherin. The man was very disappointed. He did not understand why he had worked so hard. He stood on all fours in the laboratory and thought that life had no meaning. Cherin was surprised to tell the professor that her father was strange. Choi Woo-hyuk replied that Ji Hoon was weaker than he thought. The professor told Ji Hoon to stop crying and get up. Choi Woody smiled, said he was joking, and asked the man if he really thought he was just an addition to Ji Hoon. Ji Hoon was surprised. The professor said that he would not have brought Ji Hoon to such an academic setting just because of Cherin. He had told him that his report was excellent many times before, though he did not praise him. Ji Hoon looked at him in surprise. Choi Woody said that he didn't see any better options than Ji Hoon, but it would be difficult for a man to go abroad alone during professional research. That's why the professor chose him. He thought that it would be good for the father and daughter, because they would get a lot of memories, and then they would do research. Ji Hoon asked him in embarrassment if the fact that he was just a bonus to Cherin was a joke. The professor coughed and replied that it was hard for him to joke at his age. Choi Woo-hyuk walked towards the door, as he had things to do, and told Ji Hoon to ask Cherin if she didn't believe him. When the professor left, the girl turned to her father. She said that the professor had told her about his wonderful report. The girl held her father's hand and told him how proud she was of him. She said that she was smart only because of her daddy. So she asked him to help her in the future. Ji Hoon embarrassedly agreed. The girl indignantly began to ask what had happened to him and said that she would make her dad more confident. The man smiled back at her. He said that her dad would continue to be her lifelong assistant. 2 weeks passed. The airplane was taking off. Cherin looked at the big machine with delight and wanted to fly as soon as possible. Ji Hoon had never flown before, so the first flight was exciting for him. Cherin wanted to fly high and high. Suddenly a woman approached them and asked them a question. The man was surprised to hear what had happened. The woman asked Ji Hoon if they were the father and daughter from the meme. The red-haired boy looked out angrily from behind his mother's legs. Suddenly, he took out a huge lobster biscuit and asked the girl if she wanted it. Everyone was surprised. The woman embarrassedly began to say that her son had seen the girl in the picture, so he wanted to talk to her. Ji Hoon replied in embarrassment that he had seen it. Cherin looked at the lollipop and the red-haired boy in surprise. The girl smiled and thanked him, adding that the lollipop looked delicious. The boy rubbed the back of his head in embarrassment and said that he had nothing to thank her for. The boy and his mother left. Cherin happily told her dad that it was the first time a boy had given her a sweet. Ji Hoon was taken aback by the word boy. Now he thought that soon Cherin would be going to a new school, and when she had friends, she would put them before him. The man looked at his daughter and did not understand how he could survive this. She always looked at him and smiled. He took the happy girl's hand. Ji Hoon realized that he would not be the only important person in the girl's life, and he needed to prepare himself mentally for this. Suddenly, the man thought, what if in the United States? He imagined that Cherin and a certain Daniel were going to get married in the future. He suddenly shouted that this would never happen. Cherin was surprised. Ji Hoon's eyes were burning. He was not against interethnic marriages, but not now. He wanted to protect his daughter. White clouds floated outside the airplane window. Ji Hoon and Cherin sat in their seats and looked up at the sky. The weather was supposed to be calm, but no one had canceled the turbulence. Cherin was fascinated that such a heavy thing could fly so high. Cities could be seen below. Cherin asked her dad if it was his first time flying. Ji Hoon replied that it was, and so was she. The girl smiled and denied it. She said she had flown many times because her mom had a lot of airplanes at home. Ji Hoon was surprised and smilingly asked if the airplanes were real or if she was talking about toy airplanes. Cherin answered that some of the airplanes didn't have as many seats, but they were still big enough. Ji Hoon was surprised, because only super-rich people have their own airplanes, and Yona even had several. The girl happily replied that when her mother's family had a big holiday, her aunt and uncle would fly in airplanes, and she would fly too. Ji Hoon did not understand how this was possible. He imagined a huge castle with a flock of airplanes flying towards it. He had no idea that Yona was from such a wealthy family. At the time, Ji Hoon thought it was not true, because children of that age like to fantasize and embellish reality. He was sure that Cherin had mistaken the airplanes for ordinary cars, because it looked more believable. He patted his daughter's head with satisfaction. This made her look more like a child to him, and it was cool to him. Cherin said indignantly that her daddy didn't believe her again. Ji Hoon was surprised. He did not understand what again meant. The girl angrily said that he hadn't believed her when she said she had memorized the multiplication table and when she said she wanted to invest money. And now he also thought she was lying like a child, so he stroked her. The man thought the girl could read minds. Cherin covered herself with a blanket and said that Ji Hoon was a bad father. The man nervously asked if she was joking now. The girl just looked out from under the blanket and hid again. The man did not know what to do. Things were looking bad. Ji Hoon was almost crying, because it was unfair. It was hard for him to believe that he was dating such a rich woman and his daughter was as smart as Einstein. Even if his life was a fantasy novel, readers would say it was impossible. Ji Hoon looked at the wrapped-up Cherin and did not know what to do. But in any case, he had to calm her down somehow. Cherin had been offended by Ji Hoon before, but it was very easy to improve her mood. Just tickle her, and she stops being offended. Ji Hoon began to gently tickle the girl. Cherin turned to him angrily and told her father that it was not allowed to make noise on the plane. She asked him why he was tickling her, because she was not a child anymore. Ji Hoon apologized in embarrassment. The man thought that he shouldn't force her to be distracted. He had to apologize sincerely. Ji Hoon scratched the back of his head and apologized to the girl for not believing her again. He promised that it would never happen again. Cherin was still wrapped in a blanket. She told her father that he was lying. Ji Hoon replied pleadingly that he actually knew the girl was telling the truth. In his mind, the man said that it was hard to say that after her story today. Cherin indignantly said that she knew what her father was thinking. She said she would not stop being offended until he truly believed her. Ji Hoon was embarrassed to say that he didn't mean it. He said he had done wrong by not believing her. Cherin was silent. Ji Hoon was really apologizing. Suddenly, the plane started to sway. Because of the long turbulence, the plane was shaking a bit. The passengers on the plane were worried about it, afraid of crashing. Ji Hoon grabbed his stomach and felt sick. Besides, he had to do something about Cherin. But he felt like he was going to throw up from shaking. Cherin looked at her father. She realized that he was beginning to feel sick. She took off the blanket, still angry, but still. She touched her father and asked him how he felt. The man was surprised. Suddenly the headache and nausea stopped. The man looked back at the frightened passengers. He didn't know how much time had passed and thought that Cherin must be scared too. Ji Hoon took the girl's hands, apologized, and said that he was distracted because he was feeling unwell. He then asked if she was scared. Cherin replied that everything was fine. The man said he was glad his daughter was so brave. Ji Hoon told Cherin that everything would be fine and asked her not to worry. The girl smiled back at him. Suddenly, the plane started shaking violently and all the passengers were seriously scared. Ji Hoon thought that everything had calmed down, but it was the calm before the storm. He was scared, but he was more afraid for Cherin. What if she got hurt? He did not know how to protect the girl. Suddenly he asked the girl if she wanted to pray. Cherin was surprised. He reminded the girl how they had been walking in the park in bad weather and how she had gotten better through prayer. Ji Hoon suggested that Cherin do the same now. The girl happily said she would pray. Ji Hoon then suggested that they close their eyes and begin. They put their hands in front of them and began to ask for the weather to improve. Suddenly, a glow appeared around Cherin, and she asked for the wind to stop. The radiance went to the clouds. She told the chaos to go away and ordered them to obey her immediately. Lightning began to illuminate the sky. The passengers panicked. Ji Hoon nervously asked Cherin if she was okay. The girl turned to her father in fear. The man hugged the girl in fear. Cherin did not understand what was happening. The weather was disobeying her, and she thought it would be difficult. This had never happened to her before, and she did not know what to do. The girl remembered her mother holding her in her arms and telling her that the power of a dragon's words depends on its will. Of course, her will would get stronger with age. But this meant that even as a little girl, Cherin could be strong. But there was a side effect to this great strength. Her mother asked her not to expend much energy until she grew up. The girl realized that she needed a strong will and needed to calm down and concentrate on the problem. There was a blue glow around her that was probably not visible to anyone else. The girl angrily mentally said that everyone who heard her should immediately obey her. She ordered the lightning to disappear and the clouds to disperse. She commanded the chaos to stop, and her radiance enveloped the airplane and the sky. Suddenly, the clouds began to disappear and the plane found itself in an expanse of blue, clear sky. The passengers began to calm down. Ji Hoon happily told Cherin that their prayers had been answered. The girl was very happy about this. Cherin was glad that her powers were working, but she did not understand why it had not worked before. She thought she did not have the will. The girl looked out the window. She began to worry about the side effect her mother had mentioned. But she pushed those thoughts away. The girl knew that her mother would protect her from anything bad. It was already dark outside. The passengers landed in Boston. Choi Woo-hyuk told everyone that the symposium starts tomorrow, so everyone can rest now. Ji Hoon led Cherin down the hall and suggested that she go out for a snack. The girl happily agreed. Their room was very spacious. Cherin fell on the bed and was surprised at how soft it was. Suddenly the man looked behind some curtains and was very surprised. He saw a gorgeous view of the starry sky and the shining city. Ji Hoon could not believe it. That he was really in the United States. Cherin said it was really cool here. The girl looked at her dad. Verna thought he would not fall asleep early. Today she decided to leave him because he didn't believe her story. But tomorrow, when her daddy was tired, she was going to help him. A glow appeared in her hand. Ji Hoon was looking out the window with delight. Suddenly he yawned and said that he was sleepy. He smiled at Cherin and said that he was sleepy, so he would go to the shower first. The girl happily agreed. She was smiling, with the city in the background. She was going to give her daddy a massage when he fell asleep. No one would take care of him but her. A star shone in the sky. It began to grow with different swirling rays. Cherin could not even imagine what the consequences of her actions would be. The usual clear morning came. Choi Woo-hyuk looked at Ji Hoon in surprise and said that he looked better than he expected. It seemed to the professor that the man would have a hard time sleeping on his first business trip. Ji Hoon embarrassedly replied that he was worried at first, but then it all went away quickly. And he slept soundly through the night. Choi Woo-hyuk said that was great, because it would have been hard for Ji Hoon to attend the symposium when he was sleepy. The man was surprised to hear that it would be difficult to attend the symposium. Choi Woo-hyuk replied that the greatest minds of humanity gather there. They don't care whether you are a beginner or not. Everyone has to behave professionally. Ji Hoon said that he understood. Cherin happily told her dad that he could do it. Suddenly Cherin was surprised to see a purple sky with black clouds. She asked her dad to rest at the hotel. Ji Hoon asked her what was wrong. Was she really sick? The girl replied that she was not yet used to this time zone and was very tired. The man said that if she was tired, she could stay at the hotel. Ji Hoon waved goodbye to the girl, and the girl waved back. Cherin could not understand what she felt. It was some strange energy. The girl was running down the hallway, worried that she had used the dragon language on the plane yesterday. She was worried about the side effect. There was only one method she could rely on. Everyone gathered at a symposium. One of the scientists was talking behind the podium about attribution and anonymity. Ji Hoon sat nervously in the audience. He expected that it would be difficult for him because of the deadlines. The man in the white coat continued to tell him something. Ji Hoon thought that maybe it was because there were people from all over the world performing here. Everyone had a different accent and such a variety of pronunciations that he found it increasingly difficult to understand them. Ji Hoon's knowledge of English was not enough. He did not want to and could not even deny this fact. But with every passing second, he became more and more interested in listening. He would like to perform himself someday. Ji Hoon looked at the professor on the stage and thought that he had also been a beginner once. So even if Ji Hoon is not good enough now, it won't be forever. Everyone continued to listen attentively. Choi Woo-suk knew he had the right person with him. He looked at Ji Hoon. The professor thought that the man would be able to achieve a lot if he overcame his difficulties now. The only pity was that Ji Hoon was not ready yet. Then Choi Woo smiled and decided to use this chance to discover his talents. In the lobby, everyone was standing in nice clothes with glasses of champagne and discussing something. The professor was talking to other scientists, and he praised the presentation of one of the men. The other man was saying that Choi Woo-suk's results were much more impressive. Ji Hoon's head started to spin because everyone around him was speaking English. He used to be motivated to learn English. But now, in front of people who spoke pure English, he couldn't say a word. Choi Woo-hyuk called Ji Hoon over to him. The man was surprised. The professor wanted to introduce him to some people if he didn't mind. Ji Hoon said he didn't mind, but he wasn't very good at English. The professor told him not to worry, because no one would ask a newcomer difficult questions. Choi Woo-hyuk began to introduce Ji Hoon to his colleagues and said that he had a few questions. He said that the man was a novice researcher and he had brought him along to gain experience. Everyone listened attentively. The professor said that Ji Hoon might seem like an ordinary student, but he was sure that he had a great future because... The professor smiled and said that the man was the father of the model used to create the AI he was going to present. Ji Hoon was dumbfounded. The man began to be bombarded with questions. He thought it was bad because the researchers were filling his head with English questions. Ji Hoon turned to the professor and asked what he should do. The professor clenched his fist tightly. He mentally told Ji Hoon to be stronger, to survive, and turned to him. Ji Hoon looked at the professor in embarrassment as he was bombarded with questions. Choi Woo knew the boy's potential better than anyone else, but his biggest problem was that Ji Hoon was afraid to try to do things he wasn't capable of. And the professor had no choice but to push him to do it. Choi Woo-hyuk turned away from the man, because only the one who survives can call himself his student. Ji Hoon begged the professor not to leave. One of the professors asked Ji Hoon to answer his question. The man was very embarrassed. He realized that there was no turning back and that he had to step out of his comfort zone and give it his all. He assured himself that he could do it, and he needed to prove that he was capable of anything, even alone. The sky was clear outside the window. Cherin was talking to her mother. The girl was kneeling in front of the panoramic window and asking her mother how long she was going to hide, because she knew her mother could hear her. No one knew what she had done yesterday. She asked her mom to help her. Suddenly, her mother's shining hand reached out to the girl. Yona told the girl that she had told her about the consequences and she should not use the language of dragons as she pleased. The girl looked at the shining silhouette of her mother and said that her father was going through a very difficult time and she was only using the language of dragons as she told her. Yona replied that that was why she hadn't come to her. She knew it would happen and Cherin had to learn from her mistakes. The girl asked if she had any problems now. Her mother asked if she remembered when the dragon language was no longer effective. Cherin remembered. Then Yona's silhouette asked her menacingly why Cherin was asking her such questions. The girl replied that she had forgotten because she was scared. She looked at her mother in embarrassment and asked if she would forgive her. The embarrassed silhouette of Yona asked if Cherin really thought that a simple apology would solve all problems. The girl hugged her mother and asked her to forget about it. Cherin smiled broadly and said it would never happen again. Yona wondered how Cherin could laugh when she should be crying, realizing what she had done. The woman agreed to forgive her daughter, but only on one condition. Cherin looked at her with interest. Yona said that the girl had to take responsibility for everything that would happen after that. Cherin stopped smiling and looked at the woman in surprise. Yona agreed to forgive her daughter, but only on one condition. The girl looked at her with interest. Her mother told her that she had to take responsibility for whatever happened. Cherin looked at the woman in surprise. She asked what it meant to be responsible for everything. Yona asked her to take responsibility for her actions. Cherin began to cry. In a trembling voice, she asked her mother if something had happened because of her. The woman thought about it and said she didn't know. Cherin thought this was strange, because it was clear from Yona's eyes that something had happened. The girl did not understand what was happening and what she had done. Her eyes were even more filled with tears. She really did not know. Cherin ran to her mother in tears, asking her to help her. Yona's silhouette began to dissipate. The woman told her daughter that she had to understand her responsibility for her power and she hoped that Cherin would learn an important lesson from this. The girl began to beg for help in hysterics. The woman only replied that she would soon go deaf from her screaming. Yona turned to her daughter and began to say that she had been told that she was too young to use force. But Cherin disobeyed and made trouble. The girl looked at her mother in despair. She continued to say that Cherin should be punished for this. It was too late to get out of it. Cherin's eyes filled with tears even more. She started to sob, and then suddenly, her piercing scream sounded throughout the hotel. In the corridor, someone was passing the elevator. The professor asked Ji Hoon how he was feeling today. The man was happy, he felt incredible. Choi Woo-hyuk said that it was good that he didn't help him. Ji Hoon agreed and thanked him. He couldn't believe in himself and give freedom to his strength. He wanted to show the world's scientists that he also existed. The man bowed to the professor and once again sincerely thanked him for such a precious experience. Choi Woo-hyuk replied that there was no need to thank him because he had acted like a teacher. They walked down the corridor. The professor told Ji Hoon that once Cherin got used to the time zone, he should talk to her. Everyone is excited because she is a genius, and such children are born only once a century. Ji Hoon promised to talk to her. Choi Woo-hyuk said this because he didn't want to mislead his student, because he was not just Cherin's assistant. Ji Hoon knew this more than anyone else. Suddenly, he heard a scream. They immediately realized who it was, and the excited professor told Ji Hoon to run to the girl because something was wrong. Cherin kept crying and calling for her mom. Yona told her that there was no point in crying and that it was time to realize that the world was a scary place. Cherin kept crying and begging for help. Ji Hoon ran down the hotel corridor. Yona began to calm down because she realized that the girl's father was coming. She told Cherin that it was not yet time for them to meet and she was leaving. Maybe she would help next time. The girl continued to sob with tears. Ji Hoon opened the door to the room. He looked at Cherin in surprise and asked her what was wrong and why she was crying. The girl was calling for her mom. Ji Hoon asked her what was wrong with Yona. Cherin ran into her father's arms. She tried to say something, but she started crying even more. Ji Hoon tried to ask her what was wrong. He thought she was missing her mom. Cherin cried and said that her mom scolded her. Ji Hoon put his hand in his pocket. He was surprised by these words and did not understand what was going on. He worriedly called Yona, but she didn't answer the phone. Ji Hoon did not understand why a woman could not answer the phone when her daughter was crying because of her. Then the man thought that maybe Yona had yelled at Cherin in her sleep, which explained everything. The man smiled at the girl and said that if her mother started to fight, he would protect her and asked her not to cry. Cherin looked at him in surprise and asked if it was really true. Ji Hoon confidently raised his hand and told his daughter that he would do everything to stop her from crying. So he asked her not to cry anymore, for his sake. Cherin sat on the bed and looked at him in surprise. She looked at her daddy with a pleading look. The girl smiled and said she would not cry anymore. Ji Hoon hugged the girl and said that smiling suited her much better. Of course, she was beautiful when she was crying, but she was even more beautiful when she smiled. The girl happily told her daddy that he was the best. Cherin thought about it. She didn't understand what her mother meant when she said that the girl had to take responsibility. But she was ready to use the language of dragons for her daddy. With her determination, she would definitely protect him. A few days later, at the American Weather Bureau, the employees were worried. A woman was sitting at her computer talking about a very big problem. A surprised man asked what was wrong. The woman said that 2 hours ago a medium-sized convective system was detected in California. A tornado was forming there. The man looked at the monitor in surprise. This was a rare occurrence for California. He asked what the level was. The excited woman replied that it was an EF3, which was 70 to 92.5 meters per second. The man became agitated and said they should sound the alarm and order the evacuation of the residents. The frightened woman said that there was a miscalculation. The level was EF4, although it could have been even EF5. At this rate, the entire Silicon Valley would be destroyed. Black clouds hung over the city. Ji Hoon told Cherin that the weather was good in Boston, but in California it was terrible. Cherin's hair was blowing in the wind. Her husband wanted to go shopping with her after the conference. Cherin thought about it. A few days passed after she talked to her mom, but nothing happened. The girl thought her mother had deceived her. But she was a little worried about the weather. If nothing happened by the time they got back to Korea, she would just forget about it. Besides, Daddy said he would protect her no matter what she did. The girl hugged Ji Hoon and said she trusted him completely. The man was a little surprised, but said that he trusted her as much as she did. A man and a woman passing by recognized Cherin and said that she looked very cute when she was holding her father. The girl was surprised, and Ji Hoon replied embarrassedly that they were right. They said that it would be cool if they had a daughter like that, because the brilliant things she does are just incredible. Ji Hoon was accepting all the compliments when a siren sounded. The piercing sound reached the frightened people. A loudspeaker announced that a tornado was approaching the state park. Everyone was asked to evacuate to a safe place. People began to panic and quickly hide. Ji Hoon and Cherin stood outside. The worried professor told the man to quickly hide in the basement of the hotel. Embarrassed and anxious, Ji Hoon said he was coming. The man took the frightened girl in his arms and told her not to worry and that everything would be fine. Cherin hugged him and Ji Hoon said he would protect her no matter what happened. The girl was almost crying. Ji Hoon ran down the street with Cherin in his arms through the crowd of scared people. He thought that if it was just a normal tornado, everything would be fine and the concrete underground shelter would hold. Cherin was crying and thought it might be a side effect of the dragon's tongue that her mother had warned her about. She could not sit still. Cars, bicycles, stones, and trees were flying around and falling under the pressure of the wind. The people in the Meteorological Bureau did not understand what was happening because the tornado was able to destroy the concrete building. Estimates showed that there were at least 260 people in the danger zone. One of the scientists said that they could not even send rescuers there. He asked when the tornado was going to stop. But even their best scientists could not answer that question. They said that the tornado was on the verge of weakening, but the wind speed remained unchanged. The professor governor asked for an assessment of the potential consequences and to keep all available personnel on standby for a quick response. The man was very concerned. He asked to be protected from the worst disaster in California's history. There were a large number of people in the concrete basement of the hotel. Ji Hoon looked at his phone and marveled at the fact that the tornado was blowing cars away like fluff. He thought it was too much for a tornado. Professor Choi Woo-haek said he had experienced several similar situations, but he had never seen anything like this. People in the shelter were very scared, begging for help and praying. The professor said that the power went out. Ji Hoon noticed that there was no internet either. Cherin looked at her father in fright. He smiled and told his daughter not to worry, because no matter how strong the tornado was, it would not destroy the underground shelter. The girl looked at him in surprise. Ji Hoon told Cherin not to be afraid, but he couldn't boast about it himself. He was worried that the building would collapse. But he had to stay strong for Cherin's sake and do everything he could to save her life. The people around him were crying and thought they were going to die. Cherin looked at the whole crowd. She mentally called out to her mother and told her not to leave them in such conditions and to help. Yona continued to ignore her. Then Cherin mentally told her that she would tell her dad that she was disobeying. Nothing changed. Yona was still ignoring her. Cherin said she could handle the wind herself. She said that she would show her that she could do everything without help and that soon her mom would have problems with her dad. The girl angrily stretched her hand toward the mountain, and Ji Hoon was surprised. The man asked the girl in embarrassment what had happened and if she was uncomfortable. Cherin smiled and replied that she was fine with him for now. Cherin thought it was a very brave decision to say that she would do everything by herself. But she didn't know how to do it without her dad knowing. The easiest way was to use the dragon's language, but that could have made things worse. There was only one way left. It was risky, but there was no other choice. Cherin needed a strong will to feel the tornado. And then, a radiance invisible to everyone began to envelop the girl. She was about to direct all her feelings to the center. The shining Cherin flew from Ji Hoon's hands. Her feet rose above the ground. She was able to leave quietly. Cherin flew in the sky and searched for the tornado's core. Suddenly she was frozen. In a huge tornado, which was flying automobiles and a pile of debris, there was a black core surrounded by lightning. The girl turned to it menacingly and told it to come out to her. Even more lightning appeared from the core. A stream of wind confused Cherin. The core ignored her order and the girl was angry. She shouted that he would get in trouble. Cherin told him that if she wanted to, she could destroy him with a snap of her fingers. She ordered the core to hurry up and accept defeat before it was too late. The core raged and threw out even more lightning. Nothing happened. The core did not even perceive the threat, and if not for the side effects, Cherin would have used the language of the dragon. Her eyes burned with anger. She had no choice. Lightning flew in all directions. If he doesn't listen to her. Cars were flying around, the tornado was raging at high speed. Shining paws with huge claws appeared around Cherin. There would be problems, but she had to get rid of him. Cherin's huge paws were approaching the core. She told him that she would deal with him even without the dragon's language. The girl said that this was the last warning. The core could surrender while she was kind. The big black ball of the kernel began to dissipate. Finally, it responded. The girl thought she could just absorb it. She stretched out her big paws to the kernel. But Cherin wasn't sure she could do it. The core was too big. The dark spots of the core approached Cherin. They hit her right in the chest. It seeped into her body. The girl grimaced in pain. Suddenly everything started to shake. The frightened people in the shelter were surprised. Cherin's body remained in Ji Hoon's arms. He was surprised that everything had suddenly gone quiet. He doubted the strength of the building. Suddenly Ji Hoon was afraid. Cherin smiled and said that the tornado had probably passed and that everything would be fine now. The man was scared and asked why the girl was so pale. Cherin replied that everything was fine and the tornado was over. Choi Woo-hyuk said that Cherin was right. Ji Hoon was surprised by this. One of the men said he wanted to go out and take a look around. Another of the men agreed to go with him. Ji Hoon said he'd go too and asked the professor to keep an eye on Cherin. Choi Woo-hyuk agreed. Ji Hoon could not believe it. He was climbing the stairs and thought that a tornado like this could not suddenly disappear. Suddenly, he and the men were numb with wonder. It was incredible. The sky was blue and clear. The winds had destroyed everything in their path, and it was as if they had magically stopped. Someone asked Ji Hoon if everything was really okay. A man from Cherin was sitting on the stairs and he was talking to someone on the phone. Ji Hoon replied that they were in a shelter and everything was being repaired. The woman on the other end of the phone said that she was shocked by the news and she was very happy that everything was okay. The man said that everything was fine and not to worry. He apologized for making her worry. The man hung up the phone. He was talking to his mother. The tornado was very strong. Just think, it had to go across the sea to Korea. The most powerful tornado in history had hit the world. But it mysteriously disappeared. There were witnesses to this inexplicable phenomenon. People stood in the yard with placards, claiming that the miracle was created by God himself. Even though the tornado was gone, the enormous consequences it caused did not disappear. Buildings were toppled and roads were destroyed. But there is no evil without good, and there were no human casualties. Choi At-hik said that he was informed that the conference was canceled. They will have to change the schedule and move to Los Angeles. He advised everyone to have a good rest. They suddenly had free time. The huge skyscrapers of LA lit up the night sky. Ji Hoon clutched his blanket and could not believe that they had survived. He buried his head in the pillow and thought about the fact that they had faced such a disaster on their first trip abroad. He was very worried, and now his body was breaking down. Cherin sat on the bed next to her father. The man looked at his daughter and asked if she was scared. The girl answered embarrassedly that she was, but her daddy was hugging her, so she felt good. Ji Hoon told her that if they had a free day tomorrow, he would take her to all kinds of fun places. Cherin was excited and said that she really wanted to do that. Then the man wished his daughter sweet dreams. The girl said good night in return. After a while, Ji Hoon was sleeping soundly. Cherin looked at him and thought. She reached out to him and told him to be healthy. Suddenly she stopped and thought. But still with a scared look she told her daddy to be healthy. To be strong and healthy. She looked up at the starry sky. Cherin did not understand why nothing was happening. Tears rolled down her eyes. The dragon's language no longer worked. She clutched the blanket with her hands and thought that she needed to talk to her mother. But without the dragon's language, she could not even do that. Her eyes filled with tears. She thought she would never be able to do it again. Suddenly, she burst into tears and cries. Ji Hoon woke up and asked his daughter why she was crying. Cherin was sobbing. The man said that he was nearby. The girl put her hands over her eyes and called for her mom and dad, saying she was scared. Ji Hoon thought the girl was having a nightmare. He thought the girl was okay, but it seems he was wrong. Cherin continued to cry. The man hugged his daughter and told her that everything was fine and nothing was wrong. Then Ji Hoon offered to sing Cherin a lullaby. The girl was surprised. The man said that it was so that she would no longer have nightmares and then they would wake up and go for a walk. She agreed. The man began to sing a lullaby to the girl. Cherin stopped crying. After a while, the girl fell asleep to the melody of the lullaby. Ji Hoon lay down next to her, said he loved her, and wished her sweet dreams. The man looked at the girl and thought that he was scared and did not know how scared Cherin was. He wished that Yona was with her at such moments. Tomorrow he has to make Cherin the happiest and compensate for the absence of his mom. He had become stronger, so now he could walk with his daughter wherever she wanted. The next morning the sun shone through the windows. Cherin thought about it. She knew this would happen. Ji Hoon had been dreaming. The girl asked if he was okay. Ji Hoon lay on the bed and thought about how long it had been since he had had a seizure. He turned pale. It was strange, because he had been feeling well lately. Perhaps the tornado had somehow affected his condition. The man apologized to Cherin and asked her to rest for a while, and then they could go for a walk. The worried girl agreed. She thought that if she could use her powers, her daddy would recover quickly. Cherin did not know when they would return. The boomerang returned to the girl. The side effects brought her to energy exhaustion. She was as if chained to the bottom of a deep reservoir with a black tornado in her heart. In this state, it was impossible to use the dragon language. Now Cherin understood what her mother was talking about. She sat on the bed, dangling her bare feet, and wondered how long it would take. If this case drags on, her mom will intervene and help her. And if she didn't, maybe the effects would stop soon. Cherin was outraged. She thought it was unfair, because her mother could have helped her. She thought that she didn't seem to care about her at all. This made Cherin angry. All she wanted to do was have fun with her daddy. The sun shone through the window pane. Ji Hoon stretched out in bed. Resting was good for him. He looked at Cherin and thought that she was not feeling well either. Children are unusually resilient. The man took out a brochure and asked his daughter where they should go. Ji Hoon said that there were many amusement parks here, which Cherin really liked. The man suggested that she go there. The girl thought about it and said she didn't want to. She suddenly pointed and said she wanted to go there. It was Koreatown and Chinatown. The man was surprised to ask how she was sure, since these were just ordinary streets. Cherin enthusiastically said she liked it and asked her dad to go there. Ji Hoon wondered why Cherin was more interested in a regular walk than an amusement park. He thought that she would be bored there, but if Cherin wanted to go, he couldn't refuse her. The man suggested that his daughter start with the nearest neighborhood, but said that it would not be very interesting. The girl smiled happily and agreed. Ji Hoon and Cherin came to Chinatown Law. There were red lanterns hanging around and Chinese-style buildings. The man was surprised by the large number of people. He looked at Cherin, who looked happy. He did not understand why the girl was having fun here. Suddenly, Cherin pointed to some delicious food and said she wanted it. Cherin was happy, and Ji Hoon was embarrassed to think that the girl just wanted to try street food. The caramelized strawberries really looked delicious. The father and daughter happily walked down the street eating the delicacies. The man asked if the girl liked it. Cherin said she did, and then they would go to Koreatown. Ji Hoon asked her if she was sure about that, because there would be nothing interesting there, just like at home. Cherin replied that she had fun where there were lots of people. The man was surprised to hear that. The girl replied that she just likes to watch people around her. Cherin looked around and said that she was thinking about what these people might be thinking. What kind of life they live. Many of them had left their homes, and the girl was curious about their lives. Ji Hoon thought about the people who had left their homes. Now everything became clear to him. Cherin just wanted to see the people who were close to her. The man smiled at his daughter and said that he could not even think of such a thing. Cherin smiled back and told him that Daddy should try it, because it was fun. The man ate his strawberries and thought that it was really interesting to watch people. He had never had the opportunity to take a break and think about the lives of others. It was not in his nature. Cherin really knew how to make people interested. The man was wondering if he could save up for a trip when he was done learning. Suddenly, someone approached them. A girl with incredibly beautiful blue eyes said that Ji Hoon's baby was very cute and asked to take a picture with her. Ji Hoon apologized in embarrassment because he did not understand her request. The woman repeated that she wanted to take a photo with his daughter to preserve the memories of the trip. Ji Hoon looked at the embarrassed woman and couldn't understand why she was speaking Chinese and not English, because he didn't look Chinese. Suddenly, Cherin said that they were not Chinese, but Korean. She smiled at the woman and said that her daddy only knew Korean and English, so she asked her to speak English. Ji Hoon was surprised that Cherin had learned Chinese, and the woman praised Cherin for her knowledge. The woman apologized, saying that they were in Chinatown, so she thought Ji Hoon was Chinese. The man replied that everything was fine and asked what the woman wanted. Cherin whispered to him that the woman was a traveler and she wanted to take a picture with her as a souvenir. Cherin smiled happily at the Inca and asked if she had told her father everything correctly. The woman smiled and said yes. Ji Hoon agreed to take a picture of them and the woman gratefully handed him her phone. The man pointed the camera at them. When the woman picked up the phone, she was a little surprised. She asked if this was the best he could do. Ji Hoon asked her, embarrassed, if she liked it. The woman replied that he had done his best, but she said she would teach him a trick and asked him to do it with the child. Ji Hoon surprisingly agreed. The woman asked him to strike a pose and took an incredibly beautiful photo. Ji Hoon told her that the photo was great and that the woman had talent. She laughed and said that she and her daughter were just good models. The woman asked what brought them to the United States. She thought that the husband and daughter had decided to take a family trip. Ji Hoon replied that it was something like that, and now they were heading to Koreatown. The woman happily said that this was a good coincidence, because she was also going there. The woman said her name was Maria and she was from Serbia and asked if they would mind if she joined them. The woman said it was a good coincidence, because she was also on her way to Koreatown. She said her name was Maria and she was from Serbia, and asked if the father and daughter would mind if she joined them. Ji Hoon did not know what to say. He was embarrassed to think that they didn't even know each other. He decided to ask Cherin, and if she didn't mind, then. Ji Hoon asked the girl's opinion. She said that she was okay with it, as long as her dad was okay with it. Cherin said that this auntie didn't look bad. Ji Hoon looked at the woman. Cherin was right, Maria clearly had no bad intentions. There was nothing wrong with meeting people while traveling. The woman shook his hand and said it was nice to meet him. Ji Hoon introduced himself and replied that it was nice to meet him too. He thought they would have good memories. Ji Hoon, Cherin, and their new friend made their way to Koreatown. Ji Hoon asked Maria about her teenage life in China. She replied that she had been in the United Kingdom for elementary school and China for middle school and moved to the United States for high school. She then asked about Ji Hoon's education. The man replied that he spent all his school years in Korea. Maria replied that she was very interested in their country, so she was happy to hear that they were from Korea. The man asked what she was interested in about their country. Maria replied that what Serbia was going through was very similar to what Korea was going through. That was how she had studied, and for her, Korea was an example for Serbia's revival. Ji Hoon thought that the woman might have some political ambitions, as she was fluent in foreign languages and had studied abroad. Maria then asked about Ji Hoon's wife and why they were not traveling together. The man replied that she was not with them at the moment. Ji Hoon embarrassedly said that he was happy to spend time with his daughter, but that he wished her mother was with them. Cherin said indignantly that she didn't want to see her mom. The man was surprised because yesterday she had been crying and saying that she missed her. Cherin said she didn't want to talk to her anymore and would only have fun with her dad. She hugged her dad angrily. Maria laughed and told Ji Hoon that her daughter loved him very much. The woman noticed that Cherin was good at foreign languages and asked if she had studied abroad as a child. Ji Hoon replied that she had not, and this was their first long-distance trip. Maria was surprised because Cherin spoke like a native speaker. Ji Hoon replied that his daughter was very smart. The woman replied that she would like to have a daughter like that. She looked at her watch and noticed that time had passed very quickly. Then Maria suggested that they go to a baseball game. Ji Hoon was surprised. She said that she wanted to watch the La Dodgers play tonight and asked if Ji Hoon and Cherin would be her teammates. The man replied that he had heard that a Korean was playing for them, but he didn't know much about baseball. Maria happily began to say that she would explain everything and that there would be fireworks in the evening. Ji Hoon wondered when they would be able to watch American baseball live again. Besides, it would be good for Cherin to see a professional game. He asked what she thought about it. Cherin replied that she wanted to go very much. Maria offered to go if everyone agreed. All the stands were filled with people. One of the players hit the ball and the commentators happily reported that it was unbeatable. Ji Hoon was surprised that they got 2 outs so quickly. Maria replied that it was a double play. She explained that the pitcher had thrown the ball to second base before the batter touched first, and the fielder at second caught the ball and threw it to first base. Ji Hoon started to say that the second baseman threw the ball to the right fielder and the two of them ran, which caused the batter to come out and ask if this was true. Maria replied that it was 2 outs. The man smiled and replied that he did know a little about baseball. Ji Hoon asked if it was Cherin's first time at the game. She said yes, but thanks to Maria, she understood everything. The girl was happy. Ji Hoon breathed a sigh of relief because the girl was enjoying herself. He was worried that she wouldn't get into it, but there is a certain joy in cheering for the team. The ball flew towards the stands. It was a home run. The man sitting behind them was able to catch the ball, and everyone was very happy about it. The atmosphere in the stands was amazing, the interaction with others, and the enjoyment of the game. The accumulated stress immediately disappeared. Ji Hoon was simply mesmerized. Suddenly, the girl pointed to something in surprise. It was the kissing camera. Everyone cheered, and Ji Hoon closed Cherin's eyes in embarrassment. Everyone was kissing on camera. Random people were caught on camera. Cherin did not understand what her dad was doing. Ji Hoon told her that children should not watch this. The man hoped that the camera would not point at them, because with so many people it was unlikely. Suddenly, the camera showed them. Ji Hoon was stunned. Maria asked what they should do now. In the stands, someone was shouting for kisses. Someone was shouting that it would never happen. And it was Ji Hoon. Everything was wrong, and the audience was asking him to kiss her. Suddenly, someone touched his shoulder. Maria told Ji Hoon to end it quickly. The man looked at her in embarrassment, and the woman reached out to him, expecting a kiss. People were screaming all around. Mary's lips were moving closer to Ji Hoon's. The man thought it was too much. He didn't know what to do. He felt as if he had lost his mind and did not understand anything. Yet Ji Hoon was married. Ji Hoon embarrassedly reached for Maria's lips, because a kiss was inevitable. The woman seemed to be suggesting that he end it quickly. But Ji Hoon could not. He was not ready for it. Suddenly, the people around him were surprised. Everyone clapped their hands. The screen showed Cherin kissing her dad on the cheek. The girl smiled at the camera. Someone told Ji Hoon that his daughter was the best and that they would have a daughter as well. Cherin hugged her father. He asked if she was ashamed. Suddenly Cherin looked at him angrily. She asked why her father was going to kiss a girl who was not her mother. She said that it didn't matter how many times they had seen each other, but you can't kiss someone else. Ji Hoon was worried. Cherin asked what would happen if she told her mom. He imagined Jonah trying to kill him with a huge baseball bat. The man was scared. Cherin hugged her dad's hand and told him not to worry. She smiled and said that mom would never know and that she trusted him. Ji Hoon thanked his daughter. Cherin thought about how her mother hadn't helped her, and that was why she wouldn't tell her. It was revenge. The girl made a face as if her mother could see her now. Finally, the fireworks started. Everyone was leaving the stadium. Maria said that today was a wonderful day and asked Ji Hoon what he thought about it. The man replied that it was a lot of fun and that it was not a bad idea to go for a walk. Maria thanked Cherin for helping her out. The girl said she was just saving her dad, from her mom, of course. The woman asked Ji Hoon if he was on social media. The man was surprised to hear that of course he was. Arya said that was great, because she would be able to contact them. She wanted to have a friend on every continent. It was a wonderful goal. The woman waved goodbye and said that she hoped Ji Hoon and Cherin would have the best memories of the trip. Ji Hoon smiled and said goodbye to Maria in return. He turned to his daughter and suggested that they go to the hotel. Ji Hoon suggested that Cherin go to Hollywood tomorrow. She was surprised, but agreed. Ji Hoon's eyes were shining. He planned to stay in Hollywood, visit the Griffith Observatory, and then go to Universal Studios, and then the trip would be a success. Cherin was upset. She asked how her dad was feeling, since he had been on his feet all day. Ji Hoon replied that he was fine, because if they were in America, they had to visit all the famous places. His morning pain was completely gone. He felt his muscles and said that today he was in very good shape, not even tired from walking. Cherin thought about it. Daddy did not know that his endurance was the fruit of her strength. She looked at her father. She couldn't use them today. The man was cramping again. He didn't understand why his body was so sore after a short walk, because he hadn't walked that far yesterday. Cherin stood sadly by the bed. They couldn't go to Hollywood. Cherin realized that she wouldn't be able to help her dad anymore. She thought that next time she should learn the magic of recovery. Sitting in the hotel, Ji Hoon and Cherin completed their first trip. After a while, they returned to Korea. Ji Hoon's friends did not appreciate the souvenirs. They did not understand who goes to Los Angeles and buys a keychain with the Eiffel Tower. Jang-soo said he didn't know Ji Hoon had such bad taste. Cherin said that she chose them. The men immediately changed their minds and began to say that the girl knew what she was talking about, because they were about to visit France, so they really liked the gift. Ji Hoon said he was joking. He pulled out a bag of gifts from behind his back and told his friends that these were the souvenirs they had asked for. The boys were surprised. Ji Hoon told them to be kinder next time. Jang-soo asked if Ji Hoon had been to a La Dodgers game. The man asked him how he knew. Jang-soo showed him something on his phone. A picture of Cherin kissing Ji Hoon was made into a GIF. The man was shocked. He could not understand how this was possible. His friends began to say that this GIF had spread all over the internet. They asked if Ji Hoon had been asked to participate in the show. Suddenly, someone called the embarrassed man and he picked up the phone. He pretended that he was receiving a call from the Young program. The men waited with excitement for him to finish. Ji Hoon apologized and said that he didn't have much to do. Jang-soo was surprised to hear that, as it was a very interesting show. Ji Hoon replied that he had more important things to do. His friends told him that he could become popular. The man replied that he was not interested. Suddenly, they heard someone's footsteps. The professor said that Mr. Ji Hoon would not be able to participate in the show for now because Choi Woo-suk smiled and said that Ji Hoon would be leaving for training camp soon. Choi Woo-haek said that Mr. Kim would not be able to do this because Mr. Kim will soon go to the army. The man was surprised, because he thought he had about 3 years left. Choi Woo-hyuk replied that it would be good for him.